I am stuck in a prolonged period of things not going my way professionally or socially. All that really is going on well is my time management. Still, even after having owned up to my part in getting here, I still seem stuck in a failure loop.
Okay. So what's being addressed here is the prolonged period of things not going way, and we know that a key part of getting out of a rut like this or a failure loop is taking ownership of those failures, of those problems. That's very important. But guess what? That alone doesn't solve them at all. Just saying, I didn't get promoted, okay, it was my fault, period. Yeah. That doesn't solve the fact that you didn't get promoted. I'm not getting called back to do this other contracting job. It's my fault. Does that mean you get called back? No, it doesn't mean anything. Taking ownership means that you actually have to identify the problem. You know you're responsible for it, and then you actually have to solve the problem. That's what you have to do. Just taking ownership of the problem doesn't make it go away. You have to take ownership of the problem. You have to take ownership of finding a solution, and then you have to take ownership of implementing that solution. So this is real straightforward. Now, there's one little tiny part that I want to point out, which you may or may not have noticed, Echo Charles, and I'm going to point it out. So, pay attention to this last sentence in the question. Still, even after having owned up to my part in getting here, I still seem stuck in a failure loop. What did you notice about that, Echo Charles?
As if there's another part.
There's a whole nother part, maybe even parts.
Yeah.
Right? There's multiple facets of the world that are conspiring to keep you in this failure loop.
Yeah, it's like that tone of when someone's like, hey, I did my part. I did my job. Hands up, kind of thing.
Totally.
I did my job. That's not my job. The other parts that are more implied, I guess, now that you're kind of uncovering them or whatever. It's like there's this other job that's someone else's sort of part.
So this is the thing. And this is what makes this very challenging is this idea that but how could I possibly control this or that? How can I possibly take ownership of the fact? Now, this is a weak one. How can I possibly take ownership of the fact that my boss is an idiot and fired me? How can that be my fault? That he didn't see how good I was, right? Okay, we see what's going on there. You obviously aren't being introspective and taking a look and saying, okay, this is obviously my fault. Here's what I need to change. So there's things like that where you go, look, you're just not. It was same thing with relationships, right? She broke up with me. How can I own that? Well, maybe you look at yourself and you see how you acted as a partner in that relationship. And if you just want to look at that person and say it was her fault, she was crazy, and it was her fault, she didn't understand how awesome I was. Yeah. You need to take ownership of your own behavior. Why did she think that? Now, you do get to these things where you have no control. So, got asked a question. A guy said, I lost my girlfriend to opiate overdose, dead. She died. How do I take ownership of that? And so I expanded that question because that's one of those things where you look at, when you look at it, you go, how can you take ownership of that? This person did so much drugs, and it wasn't like okay, I don't know the specifics of the situation, but if, I'm doing everything I can to help my girlfriend, and then one day I come home and she's OD'd, she's dead. Okay. How can I wasn't even there, right? And I let's just say I'd done everything, taken her to rehab, done all this stuff, and as far as I could tell, she was clean, and then behind my back, without telling me, at least she did this, right? So it's almost like, okay, that's as much separation as I can get. How do you take ownership in a situation like that? And so here's what I went on to say to this guy. I said, this might seem like a unique situation, but it's not, because there's things that occur in our lives that we actually don't have any control over. For instance, most horrible, your family member, someone, gets cancer, gets a horrible terminal disease. How do you take ownership of that? And the answer is, in these cases, when things that are truly beyond your control occur, what you take ownership of is how you respond to them. That's what you take ownership. How do you respond to, you lose your girlfriend to drugs, your kid gets cancer, you get cancer, something, you get this horrible disease. How do you respond to that? That's what you can take ownership of. And that's what you have to take ownership of. So my point in saying that is, yes, there are absolutely things that you cannot control, and what you can control is your reaction to them when they unfold. That makes sense. What scares me about this guy is he's saying he's owned up to his part, but that means he's blaming someone else. And the amount of things that we have zero control over is very small. So many things, if we look at ourselves and say, what could I do better? What could I do different? How can I make an adjustment here? How can I adapt to the way this boss is? How can I adapt to the way this girl is that I'm trying to have a relationship? And by the way, that might not be the best relationship. Maybe that's part of what you need to do, is take ownership of the fact that you're addicted to this. That's what he's saying. This guy here is saying he's so social. I'm assuming he's got some problems with his female friends, right? Or friends in general. Hey, did anyone want to come watch UFC? Oh, not really. I'm buying, guys. Oh, it's okay. We're gonna go to so I'm just there watching it by myself. I can't believe that. What's wrong with everyone else? No, actually, what's wrong with me? Now, truth be told, I don't want to watch the UFC with anybody else generally. I just want to sit alone and watch the fights. No commentary, no questions. Don't ask me a question.
Sure.
What was that move? No, I'm watching the fight.
That's interesting.
Everyone just be quiet.
A lot of times, some of us, we like to demonstrate our professional knowledge of the subject,
So, answer here. You need to look at the reason that you're probably stuck in this loop continually is because the things that you're blaming on other people, take ownership of them, get them fixed. Take ownership of them and get them fixed. Take ownership of them, make some moves. Take ownership of them, look what you can do different. That's what you have to do.